And we're live. Welcome to Awakening Warriors, where we talk about life, lessons, love, and learning. Get better at that every time.
I think it's different every time.
Probably.
That's okay. I like it.
So, there's not a whole lot to recap on our week. Like, just fucking standard life bullshit, typical
We
stuff.
added a whole new member to our family.
Yeah, this is true. We got a dog.
Another one.
She's a little slow, but she'll get there.
Yeah, she's a little uncertain and just has a little bit more of like a, I don't know if it's anxious, it's just, she doesn't know just how to be. But I think that is part of just feeling not confident yet.
Yeah, for sure. And it's slightly food aggressive.
Oh yeah, there's that.
Which isn't anything new for our person. Like, we've got a very vast experience in dogs and how to deal with them and whatever else. By no
ones
means.
that don't get along or ones that aren't friends. Because
Yeah.
we've never had dogs that were like BFFs.
Yeah.
Ever.
So the fact that this one goes after our other one, and it's only in certain times, isn't really that big of a deal. It's just being responsible and being aware.
Out
yeah.
How to make that adjustment work. Because I think
Yeah.
since we got her Wednesday evening, I think it's happened like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
But
and it's not like she's fucking, busting him up and stuff. She just kind of is like trying to
assert her.
Yeah. Assert her stuff. You want to tilt that just so that fucking thing's out of there?
What thing?
I'll tilt it.
Oh.
So, yeah.
But yeah, so we have a new member. And she's cute. And she's figuring out her way.
For sure.
We're adjusting a lot.
Yeah, that's about it. I took over the finance stuff at work now, and so that's cool. It's relatively simplistic and makes sense, so.
Yeah, and then my work stuff is coming to more of like a place where I'm actually going to make a decision. Got some more information from different places that I had talked to, and so getting closer to having a job.
So yeah, anyways, this is our topic. Fuck, sorry, I was reading a text message. Or just acknowledging who did that. Is about egos and complexes. So they kind of go hand in hand for the most part. So everybody's got like a certain way they see themselves and a way they see the world kind of thing. That's probably the simplest way to describe it, and how they respond to the world. So I personally, you would always say I had a daddy complex or a father or hero complex, because I always wanted to come to the rescue of people and stuff and things. And
Well, hold on. I feel like I want to back up a little bit, because for people who have maybe been doing this work for a while, ego makes sense. They know what that is. But a lot of times people who maybe have just been introduced to that or don't know what it is hear ego and think of like the way that society says ego. Of like, oh, he's got a really big ego. Because remember when I had that conversation with my dad, I said something about ego, and he's like, well, I don't have an ego. And I was like, we all do. Like, it's a part of our being.
existence.
Yeah. And it generally tries to keep us safe and small and comfortable.
Yeah. And some are bigger. Yeah, every individual has a different size ego, and ego. There's nothing necessarily even wrong with ego in general. So ego can definitely be a positive thing. Ego is really just a tool for us, but we cannot allow our ego to, if we harness it properly. It's like a horse, kind of thing. You can harness the ego and allow it to pull you forward, or you're gonna fucking
Get bucked off.
You're gonna get bucked off. So.
I've been listening to Abraham Hicks a lot recently, and this morning this lady just asked, like, what do you think about teachers in this space who talk about like getting rid of your ego or banishing your ego? Because she described that she had heard somebody say it's edging God out, EGO, which I never heard of, which I thought was interesting. But then Abraham Hicks said, I wouldn't necessarily say it's edging God out because you can't, like maybe pinching the connection. But like you said too, what came to mind and what I've heard a lot is like we can befriend our ego, like it's not going anywhere. So it's kind of like that shadow work. If you just like choose not to look at it and like let it do its thing, like you said, it's gonna be that horse that bucks you off. Like it's gonna be a stuck point for you within yourself.
Would you consider your ego and your inner child similar?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, like it's kind of like, oh fuck, what'd you just say? Damn it. I was trying to make a connection there, but I can't remember what I was gonna say.
Like what I just said?
Yeah. So
edging God out, pinching the communication. You can befriend ego, or it can like be shadowy and.
Yeah. Yep. So you know you can, like, I don't know. I'll just fucking kibosh that for now.
So like you were saying though, like it's a tool. Like it's not going anywhere, so we might as well look at it and be able to use it for good. Because if you just let it do its thing by default, it's probably going to screw you over more than likely.
Yeah, you have to be aware of like what the downfalls of your ego are, because otherwise if you're just completely oblivious or completely unaware, or just like neglect that side of things, it's gonna hold you back essentially.
So for like an example I can use in our lives is like this move to South Dakota. There were definitely like doubts that came in my mind and thoughts that were like, is this the right decision and should we be doing this? Like those thoughts and that part is ego, because this move is something new and something risky and something scary, and so the like that doubt, that those thoughts that came into my head, that's ego wanting to keep me quote unquote safe, wanting to keep me in the familiar.
There's also like on a show we were watching, the one dude was drinking and the other dude said, I'm done drinking, and then he started basically giving the guy shit, genuinely giving the guy a hard time for not drinking, and even that is ego. You know, that guy basically sees this other guy stop drinking and everything else, and he's like, oh, well, you know, oh, now you're better than me, blah, blah, blah. That's ego coming out in order to try to protect or justify the decisions that he's making, right or wrong, it doesn't really matter, but ego sees that and, you know, it has to justify it. So.
Yeah. So like other people's ego, if you're not aware, your own ego can wreak havoc, but then other people's can also, because in that instance I think too, like sometimes our ego will come out and project onto other people because it's like, this is how we connect. We connect by drinking. So if you stop doing that, then my ego is like, well then what are we going to do? How are we going to connect? Like, this is what we do, and that's ego. It likes to be familiar, safe, comfortable.
That's why it's so important to find people that, you know, that you can share positive outlets or positive experiences with, just in general, as far as friends and family and people that you hang out with, rather than, you know, going to the bar or, you know, smoking pot or whatever it is, because yeah, it's just not, because once you get caught in that trap, you're fucked basically, you know, and it's going to be harder to get out, because if that's what everybody does and that's what your friends do, then, you know, it's a drastic move from moving from here, you know, where you go to the bar every day and, you know, talk shit about your wives or whatever else, to going to here to, you know, fucking Amway meetings or, you know, something like that. Like that is like drastically different. So then you got to not only do you have to leave your habits, you also have to leave the friends that you know,
which can be scary for ego, right?
Yeah.
And so Abraham Hicks talked about this too, which I thought was interesting because, again, like it's not going anywhere. And so they're talking about like take your ego and go into the vortex. Like, and so the vortex is like this space where everything that you've ever wanted exists, because all of the manifestations, all of our intentions, like they're out there in this field of intention, or vortex as she calls it. And so she's like, just take it with you. And so like I think there's never going to be a point where you don't have some of those thoughts and doubts and whatever, because we are human beings, and again, ego's not going anywhere. But you can still have that part of you and still do the scary things and still like prove to your ego like we're gonna be okay, let's go do this anyway.
Yeah, like you arguments and stuff. Oh, excuse me. Like when people get into arguments, it's typically like two egos bashing each other, and if you can have at least one side of the argument like relatively intelligent as far as keeping their ego in check, the conversation will go a lot better because it won't just be like, you know, you call this person that name, that person calls this name. Now you got two offended, hurt ego / inner children, and you know now they're just gonna throw fucking mud back and forth. You know, at least if you can keep control and the other person throws mud or whatever, then you can hold that conversation to, you know, oh, what was that fucking concept? Oh, are you on steady ground right now? Do you remember that concept? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We did that for a little bit, right?
Yeah, are you standing on solid ground right now? Yeah. So there's a concept called "Are you standing on solid ground right now?" which basically makes the other person reflect. So like if we were arguing, or if she was all mad or whatever, and she's coming at me with a lot of ego and stuff, you could ask her like, or I could ask her, are you standing on solid ground right now? And then basically like this person, you know, now you have to self-reflect and, you know, look inside and say like, okay, am I being reasonable right now? You know, and at that point you're just like, oh fuck, I'm probably not, or I definitely am, but usually you're not if that person asks you, is asking you at that point. You know, it's basically a good tool to have the other person bring down their firing weapons or whatever,
And
in a healthy way.
We'll get more into like detail about this too, but I think like the complex part of that, because knowing my ego complexes or the complexes that I have, I feel like I remember that working a little bit between us, but I could also feel myself feeling criticized because you said that, feeling annoyed that like, and so, but those are all part of like the complexes that would come up because my ego's already full force.
So that tool might work with certain types of egos and not other egos, obviously. Because like for me, it'd probably make, I think it would work really well.
Yeah, where I have a tendency to probably see that as like you criticizing, or me feeling like you think that you're better than me, so you can like say this thing. And we'll get into these complexes because that plays into that. But another one that we've done recently, and not a ton by any means, but I think it was it Aubrey Marcus or Sean Wayland, the Be the Bigger Person.
Be the Bigger Person was Sean, I believe. Oh, no, it was the other guy.
Aubrey Marcus?
Yeah, it was Marcus.
And I think maybe him and Violana were having this podcast conversation, but like if you are always focusing on like, am I being the bigger, and not saying that out loud, because that's also ego, like
you did the first time.
I'm being the bigger person here, but like if each partner is focused on being the bigger person, like what is that going to look like in your relationship?
I'll make a point. If you're being the bigger person, you don't need to tell the other person you're being the bigger person.
Exactly. But yeah, the very first time I used it, I like walked away and didn't say anything, and then I was like, I'm being the bigger person right now, which clearly to like let him know that
it's not being the bigger person at all.
Let's be back there.
So complexes. And you can go into ego a lot more and look at different angles and stuff in that regards. But
yeah, so there's a lot more too that came up, but that's just blanket intro.
I wanted to do this, and I had a lot more excitement when it first happened because because you can conceptualize a concept and you can like embody a concept. Like you can understand it by reading paper, or you can actually like understand it with your being and or your soul, So she would always say that I had a hero complex and I always wanted to come to the rescue of everybody and whatever else. And I disagreed the whole time when she was saying this, and she's probably been saying this for a long time. And it's probably, I call it, and maybe there's a complex that's already created that like actually has a definition of this, but I call mine the daddy complex because I want to be everybody's fucking daddy and tell them how to fix things and whatever else. Not in a because for instance, the hero complex will sabotage other people's success just to be the hero. And I would never do that. Well, I won't say never, but
that's just not.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah, that's not how I roll.
Operate.
So that's not what I want to do. But what I do like to do is teach people concepts and like introduce ideas and new information into people's lives. So for me, the personal development space, Jordan Peterson, Sean Whalen, Aubrey Marcus, Kevin Trudeau, Paul Chek, I mean the list goes on. Jesse Itzler, Ed Milet, fucking there's tons of people that, and these are like people that I think about on a daily basis. Like I see their content on Facebook because I follow them, or I specifically listen to a video on YouTube. And so like for me, they're just natural. It's just like, you haven't heard of fucking Robert Kiyosaki? Like how have you not heard of Rich Dad Poor Dad? Like that's one of it's like the number 1 finance book ever written, as far as being sold, I believe. And so, or Wim Hof, like how could you not hear about this shit?
Goggins.
Goggins.
People haven't heard of Goggins. They're like, what?
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck? So, like for me, I'm like, whoa, I can introduce this person to a whole new thing. And I'll go through the story a little bit so like you can actually understand where I'm coming from. So I got here 3 weeks ago 4 weeks ago by myself. It's been a month now. So I got here about a month ago by myself and closed on the house. And then my dad ended up coming through town. Long story short, we talked or whatever, or hung out for a good majority of the evening. And then I wasn't tired when I was going home. So I fucking went to the strip club and just like fucking had a couple drinks and then went home. But when I was there, I was talking to this chick, and she was like talking about anxiety, and I was talking about like the cold bath, and she's like, oh no, I've never heard about that. And I'm talking about self-sabotaging, and I'm like, you're self-sabotaging right now. And I'm like, I'm aware I am self-sabotaging because I'm drinking this drink right now, but I'm aware that I'm doing it, and like there's just a whole lot of fucking shit. And then I came to the realization, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I really enjoyed that conversation just in general. And it could have been with a stripper, or it could have been with a fucking... what's that?
A banker.
A banker, yeah. It doesn't matter to me. But if they seemed receptive and it seemed like they were genuinely interested in the concept, I'm like, oh, fuck, that really fills my cup. There's... basically it just makes you feel good, gives you energy. It, I don't know how to describe that, but it fills your cup.
Yeah. Makes you feel good.
So, I kind of came to the realization, like, I don't have a hero complex. I've got like a daddy complex. I like helping and teaching and showing people new tools. And, that was obviously one of the reasons that we did this podcast. One of the many. Because I'm like, I've gathered all this information from all of these different individuals that I listed. So, you gotta think like probably fucking, 50 different individuals with 50 different ideas and 50 different concepts, all bringing into one, Like, we haven't even touched the tip of people that I've listened to, like Les Brown and fucking all those guys. Like, it's not even, yeah. So I'm taking all this information and then I'm basically putting it into... one general place. I'm not as good as they are as far as relaying that information or even to the depth of understanding that. But even if I can touch, like if I can drop that seed and then they have that seed, and then if they want to know more, they can go find those guys, in regards to drinking from a water hose. But anyways, so one of my things is the fucking daddy complex, is what I call it. And
I find it interesting because, which I said this before I started, but when nobody's asking you for that like help or assistance or tool, you love to give it. But when and you still will do it, but if people need you to do something, like you'll still do it, but like when it comes to me, like you complain and bitch because you have to do everything and nothing can get done if you don't do it, blah, blah, blah. But like and it's not even like dropping the seeds, like these really positive examples you're giving. I will be like doing something and then you'll come up and be like, well, why don't you, like, I didn't even ask you. I'm doing it this way. There's more than one way to skin a cat. Like,
I'm showing you. I'm just offering a more effective.
When I'm not asking, that's when you love it. When like nobody's asking you for it. But when someone comes to you.
For example, like what? When you come to me and ask.
Oh, when I come to you, like even
anybody comes to me.
And that's what I mean. Like you do it. I'm not saying you don't do it with a good heart, but like when your mom needs help, or your aunt needs help, or like Rich and Dale, like.
It just depends, I guess. It depends on. I think it depends also on how the fucking problem is presented. Also, I get frustrated with the fact that like they think they know something and then they fuck everything up, and then they just bring me this absolute mess. Like, oh no, they changed my password. I got hacked. I'm like, no, bro, you forgot your password, and I already fucking told you like to write it down and do all this stuff. Depending on the situation, stay down, fuckface, motherfucker.
He literally would have been fine had you not stick your foot there. See? Like, he would have been fine. He would have figured it out. He's literally never jumped on the laptop.
He was planning on it, bro.
Well, he would have fit right there, I bet you.
No, he was already looking right there.
Anyway.
I bet you.
But even, like, we'll be driving somewhere, and he'll, like, be in the passenger seat. I'm driving, and feel the need to tell me where to park. Like, bro, I can park where I want. Everything's okay. I didn't ask you, 1. And 2, why does it matter if I park here or park there? Like...
Because that's the most effective way.
And so that's why, I don't know. I think maybe, like, those might be, like, 2 separate, almost. Like, I don't know. But that's why, I don't know if I call it, maybe I did call it hero, but that's where I feel like you always want to come to people's rescue, and you're like, no, actually, I hate doing that.
Yeah, because I don't want you to be fucking desperate.
But you also, like, not as much now, but had a lot of that in your space. Which,
what?
A lot of people needing you to come to the rescue for things.
When I was a kid or when I was an adult?
An adult.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like, just within the past 6 months, I could probably point out a bunch of different examples where, now, like, rescue piece comes in and then that. Yeah. But anyway, so that's 1 for you, which is also interesting because I think the stripper bar place, what is it called?
Congo Club.
Well, I know what that's called, but strip club, there we go. Strip club. Stripper bar doesn't sound right. Also fits into this example of one of my complexes. So
Also, just a side note, I want to even like fucking, I don't know if it's this time or the next time, but like talk about addictions and like staring them in the face versus avoidance.
That's another time, I think.
Yeah.
So even in just like our brief conversation before we started recording, I had asked like, is victim one? Like, I don't know what that would be called necessarily, but you mentioned inferiority. But I think those are 2 different ones for me, because the inferiority one is like not feeling good enough, period. And so that's where that fits. The victim one, I think, is like, you're making me feel this way. You're acting this way, and so that makes me sad.
I think it's both inferiority, though. I mean, there might be a slight difference, variation, but I mean, the same thing. You're doing this, so I feel like this. That's still inferiority. You know what I mean?
Kinda. I think for me, what sticks out in my head with inferiority is more so the like, I'm not enough wound, which, yeah, I mean, that one even comes into that example. Or it did. I'm like over it now at this fact, or at this point, but yeah. So anyway, I don't know, I guess if I want to like talk about inferiority, which that one makes sense, like there's a part of me that just doesn't feel good enough. So whether that's good enough to be with you, or smart enough, or capable enough, or...
Which I think is where a trauma bond comes, because I have the superiority concept.
So interesting. I mean, yeah, just because you have a superiority and then the exact opposite I have, and then we ended up together.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, we've talked about this in past episodes, like we're aware that that's how that started. Now, not then necessarily. And then the victim one. So I think, and I said this too, like I think that's getting a little bit less for me now, but it's still there and it still is super present. Like I think I've started taking more responsibility for my emotionality and where I'm at and like how I'm feeling, and not necessarily putting it as much on you as I used to, because I still get influenced for sure, and I might fall into that complex a little bit, the victim one. But it used to be real bad, where I was like taking no responsibility for my stuff, and how I was feeling was completely and totally up to you. And again, some days that still happens because I don't
Or
have
the
it.
fact that, like, I need this from you, I need that from you, generally.
Right.
Like, at the end of the day, no one is responsible for your happiness or anything that you need except you. Like,
And
obviously there's relationship there, but
right. And I was gonna say that there's still parts of me that like we've had conversations around what some of our needs are, but I now have so much more like understanding and I think a little bit more embodiment of like I need to find all of that stuff within me way before I ever come to you for any of it. Like that's the issue, is I was not having that self-love. I was not having like any of my own strength and courage and whatever, and then I was coming to you to try to fill that up in me, and that's not how that works.
yeah. And if, let's say, even if I was willing to just give that to her, that's not necessarily healthy either, because then it's always a crutch essentially, because then you always have someone you're able to go here to get the drug rather than producing it yourself essentially.
And that's where like that codependency is huge, because if I don't have my own anything to stand on and everything is just external through you or through this friend or through my parents, then as soon as that thing's gone, all of that goes with it.
Yeah, whether I die or whether
You're mad
I'm mad or whatever, it doesn't fucking
right.
matter. Then basically you're everything's at a whim of everybody else and you control nothing.
Right.
So
the mercy.
Yeah, you're at the mercy of everybody else depending on how I'm feeling today. I might feel like fucking trash and now I'm just pissy and shitty, and now you have to feel that way because, you're so relying on me. So
And go ahead.
I have some codependency things as far as mood and stuff like that. What was the self-realization that I came to the other day? Fuck. It was so good, actually. I think I texted it to you the other day. I think that I feel responsible or something for how you... Not for how you feel, but for something.
Yeah, so it was because sometimes I get in these like really sensitive, hypersensitive moods, and everything you say triggers me. See here, like even just saying that felt really big to me. But like in those modes, I am full like victim, inferiority, all of that. And so I'm just really sensitive. I'm not lighthearted. I'm not playful. I'm very serious. I'm very like easily triggered. And then I said something, or I've said some things in the past about you always want me to get out of that as quick as possible. Because, and I've always said, I think it's because it's just uncomfortable for you. Like, I'm not...
Which it's not.
I know that. I'm saying, I used to say this, so let me finish
I
that.
Understand.
Like, it's uncomfortable for you because you want everyone, like, you feel whatever, and so you want me to be that way too, because me crying and me being bitchy and me being this is just, like, uncomfortable. It's not a pleasant time. And so you want me to hurry up and get out of it. And then that's when you said...
I don't remember. Something about basically feeling responsible for...
Yeah, I think like my issue, or not, you didn't say this specifically, but basically like that you felt responsible when I was in those moods.
Yeah, it's not, it was something better than that. Because I don't feel responsible, but for when she's in those moods exactly. I don't know.
You did use that word. I know you did. I can go grab my phone.
Yeah. Yeah, responsible, I'm not saying, but I just don't think it was worded like that. It's something along those lines, but it's much more embodying, I guess. Because like I could, I don't feel responsible for when you're in this or in a lot of moods. Like I don't, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, maybe we'll even just have to have a conversation around that, because maybe I'm confused then of where you actually were trying to go with that.
We'd have to read the text message again, but it was a realization in that moment. I was like, huh. I've had a lot of realizations even just coming here. I mean, because the more realizations that you can come about yourself and others, the more enjoyable your life will be. But like the the further you can get along in life, like as far as, you know, just everything. Because if you're in these patterns, right, and Tony Robbins and Sean talks about these patterns about, like, okay, simple one. I leave the toothpaste off the toothpaste thing, and I'm randomly making this up, because I fucking rarely ever do that. And I fucking leave the cap off all the time, right? And then she comes in and she gets mad because the cap's off the fucking thing. And that's a pattern. It happens day in, day out, like, you know, every other day or whatever, you know, for 40 years of marriage. At some point, you can stop that pattern with awareness, because once you're aware that, like, okay, that causes us to fight, and then we go to bed angry, and then, oh, fuck, you know, like, you know, it's just over and over and over again. You can radically change your life, because everything in life is like a fucking pattern, you know, like the Habits book, what's that called? The
Power of Habit.
Power of Habit. Jesus, I don't know why I can never remember that. It's probably some sort of like self-identity thing, like, you know, I can never remember that book. What is that general concept called? Like, people identify with their sickness and stuff like that. Like, if you identify with something that's, like, let's say
I understand your examples.
Okay, well, just say that.
No,
you can't think of the word right now? Okay, then just communicate that. You're just fucking staring at there, so I'm just going to keep talking until I get something, like, because I don't recognize that you're...
The only other thing I'm thinking is self-prophecy or whatever. But I don't think that's that.
Yeah, no. But you know the concept that I'm talking about. So, like, even that's to a degree is a complex as well. You know, like...
Oh, yeah.
You
like
want...
an illness complex, or...
Yeah, but, like, I'm this person, and I have this who else would I be without this disease, you know, concept. Like, so you identify with the disease. You know, you identify with the problem. You identify with whatever, you know, insert here. So, you know, that's even a massive complex. Like, I identify with my job. I identify with my big house. I identify with the amount of money I make. I identify with the disease that I have, you know, it's because I get attention or, you know, whatever. So.
And I think the thing, too, with complexes, like, they sound not great. And, like, again, they can be hindering. I don't want to say the word negative because they're there for a reason. They served a purpose in us at one point in time or they wouldn't be here. But I think being willing to, like, look at them and, like, look at the shadowy parts, like, you can, I don't do this super often, but, like, an example that I've heard many people talk about and give is, like, you can, like, thank that part of you. And it sounds frou-frou and probably makes you want to throw up and whatever, but, like, you, as soon as you start to, like, look at that part of you with a little bit of, like, tenderness and love and grace and, like, understanding, it's not as all-consuming. When you, like, have this, like, oh, I have this, like, not enough wound or this inferiority thing.
And you identify with it and you can't get rid of it.
And then you just keep focusing on that and focusing on that and focusing on that. Like, you're going to get more of that. If you're just like, okay, like, yeah, that is there, but, like, I'm working on loving myself. Like, thank you for showing up. Like, it's kind of uncomfortable to feel this way, but I recognize that, like, a part of me, this served a purpose at one point. And so I just need to work on changing that pattern, like you said. So it can feel daunting, I think, but...
There's such a fine line in being able to, and I struggle with this as well, you know, like, oh, I'm not vulnerable, I'm not compassionate, I'm not whatever. You know, there's a fine line in acknowledging the fact that that is how you are right now, or you have those tendencies, or whatever you want to call it, and being able to overcome that because, you know, you're willing to walk away. There has to be some point where you can just... Because if you keep telling yourself that you're not compassionate, you're not vulnerable, you're not smart, whatever else, you know, you got a fucking great example of this too. Because you know, like, I'm an asshole for, you know, saying that you're a dumb fuck or whatever, you know, insert here, and then, but you also already have that. So then at some point, like, you have to, like, say, I am intelligent, I am smart, I am whatever, you know, because usually I only say those things when you do dumb shit, and then. You know, then that's almost, yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But at some point, you gotta be like, all right, fuck it, I'm done. Like, instead of saying, like, for me personally, one is I have anxiety, or I experience anxiety. Like, that is one that that I've struggled with for years. But at some point, You just gotta say, I do not have anxiety. I do not experience anxiety. And there will always be times that you experience anxiety to a degree, but, you know, or depression or whatever else. But you have to stop identifying with that, because that's just, you're fucking yourself over saying that, you know, that is you. That is not you. So you can, you know, that's, I mean, to a degree, that's ego. And ego is identifying with that, because that is what ego knows. So, you know, it's an interesting concept, because like I said, it's a very fine line where you have to say, like, okay, I am this currently, and I can become this. But if you always have this currently, you'll never become this. So then you have to just say, fucking drop it in the line, you know, like, oh, I am a smoker. All right, well, stop smoking. Done. Fucking over. You know, and certain things like anxiety or vulnerability or compassion or, you know, inferiority complex or whatever is a very challenging thing to overcome compared to, like, not putting a cigarette in your mouth, you know, because it's more of a pattern, rather, so is smoking, but smoking, like, you can, like, physically,
you can stop that action.
You can stop that action.
Not buy the cigarettes, you can.
Yeah, but anxiety is different. Inferiority complex is different, you know, like, so, but you just have to be aware of these things. It's super interesting. Another complex that I have, which I already mentioned, is the superiority complex. I feel like I'm better than a lot of people. And that's particularly because, so, you know, it's hard for me to even talk about this due to the fact that I don't disagree with it. You know what I mean? So I'm like talking about the complex that I have that I appreciate.
That you agree with?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I have this thing, but, like, it's true, but... Like...
yeah, it's true.
I think I'm better than other people, but, like, I am.
Well, yeah, exactly. Basically. But, like, you know, like, if you didn't put in the same amount of work as me, I'm not gonna think that you're, or that I'm as equal as you are.
That's
you know,
even
like,
ego, though. That, like, your accomplishments and your efforting and your trying equals who you are.
Yeah, I agree.
But again,
I can conceptualize.
I was like, that's your complex. So for you, like, this all makes sense, clearly.
Yeah,
like,
but, like, you know, like, if I fucking put in hours at the gym, and you fucking sit on the couch, you know, we are not fucking equals. I believe everybody was created equal. Like, so when you're a kid, you were as a child, everybody was created by God. You were created equal. But at the end of the day, if I do this and you do that and we both make choices, like, I am not a fucking neurosurgeon. I am not, like, you are a superior neurosurgeon. I have no problem saying that. Or you are a superior clarinet player. Or you're a superior podcaster. Or you're a superior runner. Like, you know, whatever. Like, there is someone better than me in every area of life. And that's where the ego comes out of it. Because I can humble myself and say, like, okay, this person does know more, or this person is better. And I've got no problem acknowledging that.
And I think, too, like depending on what room you're in, like, thinking about some of, like, the other people that... Because at first I thought, like, maybe you're not around the right people. If you think that you're better than all these people, like, maybe your circle's not. But then I'm thinking about just others, like, that we get around, like, then you do humble yourself. We don't, like, walk into every single room and you're like, I'm the fucking best.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah.
Yeah, but if I'm in the fucking mall or a random store, like, and I look around and I'm like, I'm better than you. You know, like, I'm just like, I don't literally think that. Like, I usually think about, man, I can't imagine having that mindset that was able to produce that product. You know what I mean? Because your body's a product. So
that outcome, maybe.
That outcome, like, whatever. You know, I could just never imagine. And maybe God will humble me or whatever you want to say by fucking putting me through something just incredibly despairing and fucking, you know, that would produce that idea. But there's just way too many people with fucking horrible bodies, horrible finances, horrible relationships out there that have not been through shit that should produce that outcome. So either way, I was just going over the fact that I have the superiority complex, but I'm also okay with having the superiority complex. And the superiority complex only exists, and I bet you at some time, at almost sometime through somebody's day, everybody's day, they hold the superiority complex. But I probably hold the superiority complex in probably fucking 80% of my day, so.
And realistically speaking, like, and I don't know if this is just coming from my inferiority, but like, I have this feeling that like that complex is going to serve you more than mine is going to serve me.
Oh, 100%.
So like, I get what you're saying, like, I'm okay with that. Like, one, again, I think it's that like self-confirming, like, I have this thing, but I like it because I am. So like, you're just in this cycle of like.
Yeah. The reason I have more is because I deserve more. Like I put in the effort. I put in the work. I put in countless hours compared to somebody else who hasn't. So, and that's where like Ed Mylett talks about. I've never heard him talk about that before. Talks about the concept of self-confidence is self-trust. Like when he said that, I was like, holy fuck. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. Like, that was just mind-blowing to me. I was like, holy shit, that's insane. I'm like, like I was doing these things already to build my self-confidence, but I didn't know why I had self-confidence. Like, the reason I had self-confidence is because I trusted myself. Like, I knew I was going to the gym. I had the discipline to do these things, so I deserve that self-confidence, Like, there's no reason why I should not have that self-confidence for the fact that, because I put in the work, So, I was like, fuck. And then, like, for you, like, in the past, you never put in the work. Obviously we were younger, whatever else. You never did the work. You never did anything hard or challenging and everything else. But now that you're doing things like, you're showing yourself that you have self-discipline, you're running 50 miles, you're doing the fucking workshops or whatever, obviously your self-confidence is still relatively low for where it needs to be, but you're, it's drastically different from where you were to where you are now.
Yeah. And I think too, I don't know if we're going down a rabbit hole, but on that topic, like, they don't have to be these huge, massive things all the time either. Like, little things, like, I'm going to drink 8 glasses of water today, and then actually doing it. I'm going to go to the gym 3 times this week, and then actually doing it. I'm going to say no to this cookie that he offers me, and then actually saying no. Like, even those, like, little trust things of, like, saying I'm going to do this thing and completing that is going to help with that. It doesn't always have to be a 50-miler and
because that's where it starts. You can't fucking... How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, like...
I just used that last week with a client.
Nice.
I even brought up the self-trust and self-confidence thing.
That's what Sean talks about all the time. Well, he brings it up frequently. Oh, I can't say all the time. We should talk about that fucking...
Let's not today.
That was fun.
I'm on the crash. I'm not crashing necessarily, but I'm definitely like...
Long story short, we both had a decent amount of ego, and I think I was I was being more whatever than you were at the time.
What? Are you talking about this?
Aware. When we were going to Yankton. And we're not jumping in the whole thing.
Okay, hurry up then.
But I was just giving that example about ego, because that was an ego thing. We were driving to Yankton, and you were in the thing for the most. You were just solid, set in ground ego.
Yes.
Like,
this was like one of those I was just sensitive and triggered and running with it.
And my ego was having a little fun, Like, I was aware what I was doing, but I was allowing ego to run the show. But I didn't press it too much. And I was, at this example, I was the one that was, per se, standing on solid ground, or what was the other example? Being aware of... no, because I wasn't even applying that at that time. Basically, I was standing on solid ground, so I wasn't pressing her. I was pressing a little bit, but I wasn't pressing too much, So, but either way, the point is, like, that was a perfect example of how, ego and was running the show at that moment.
And how, like you said, like if at least even one half of the partnership can somewhat keep their shit together. Because had you been like running with your ego too, that would have been so much worse. Like it was already not great.
Yeah. And so there's different ways, real quick, different ways for egos to show up too. Her egos and a lot of people's egos show up just out of control and whatever else, you know, and mad and angry
like
and everything.
Say things I don't mean.
Yeah.
And
I have that, but it's on a rare occasion. My ego is like toying with people once they're in that mood. You know, like, oh, I can fucking poke here and poke there. Like, I'm still very in control, but I'm still allowing ego to have its way.
Which screws me up even more, because I'm like, you are consciously making this egoic choice. Which, I don't know, I mean, theoretically speaking, like, maybe that is a more evolved place to be, because mine is just like, woo, like, running, you know, and in those states, I feel like I have way less control.
I feel like I have a lot of control, and I just want to...
Which pisses me off, because I'm like, you even know, like, you could just not, like... Anyway, really quick, I want that example you're talking about driving to Yankton, that was the same day we did the podcast last week.
Yeah, it was.
So,
yeah.
You all saw, if you saw last week's episode, just how the energy was, and that continued.
Yeah.
It got much, much better once we got to Yankton.
It went back and forth, and I was in a small mood, probably like a level 2 or 3, and then you were probably like a level 7 or 8, depending on...
When? The whole time?
No, depending on the day.
We were talking about
because it went from fine to fucking bad, to good to bad, to good to bad.
I was like, I'm just so confused, like, or not confused, but I'm like, this back and forth I cannot do. I'm like, because you were nice and sweet to me, and then one second, like the next second you're being an asshole, like, yeah. So it was really, yeah, that was a weird day. But then once we got to Yankton, it was a lot more fun.
Yeah. I don't even want to go anymore.
I didn't, bro. And then I, like, immediately, before we even left town, I said that and, like, had a few tears. And then, like, Yankton's, like, over an hour away, and the majority of the ride there was a shit show.
Yeah, it was fun, though. I had a blast.
So fun.
All right.
Anyway.
Yeah, that concludes our episode for the most part. So, yeah, I'm not even going to fucking recap. The fact is,
yeah, there's a lot in there.
Get your egos in check and just be a recognize your ego and recognize the complexes that you have, because once you understand yourself more, you can you can adjust yourself, and you can adjust how you respond to other people and whatever else. And that's not to like cater to them, but that's like to, you know, keep, for instance, like arguments lower and stuff like that. So like, you know not to say those words or say that thing or whatever. So
yeah, I was gonna say step 1 is just gonna be awareness. So if this is all new, and like step 1 is just gonna be aware. And when you hear like those thoughts come up or those feelings come up, and like, is that really you? Is that ego? And that's step 1.
Cool. That's it. Follow us on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram, and I'll even go as far as add us as a friend on Facebook, which probably most people probably already do.
Probably.
But,
and we appreciate you all.
Yeah. So thanks for listening. I hope this helps to some degree, because like what I reiterated, like the point is, I've got a lot of my own reasons to do this, but also to offer, you know, a lot of information that people may never hear and experience. Because they never really go through it, and they might just stumble upon us, or they're friends of ours or whatever else. So, cool. All right. See you guys later.
See ya.